fourth graders, my name is Mrs. Slack, and we are going to work on a project called It's My Party, and it deals with fractions and equivalent fractions, which is what you're doing now in math anyway. So I suspect that your teacher probably gave you this kit, and it says on it, It's My Party. So here's the project you're going to be working on. You're having a birthday party, and your mom has decided that one of the activities at the party will be cake decorating. Each friend will receive a slice of cake to decorate. So this project is in two parts. Part one, and there will be two videos. So this is the video for part one. In part one, you will be using the provided data, say it however you want, to create your cake and individual slices. You will be finding equivalent fractions and making comparisons. So this is the poster that I created for part one. Yours will look like this. And then part two, you will be collecting your own data to create your cake and individual slices. You'll be finding equivalent fractions, and you will make comparisons there as well. So inside your kit, you will find a whole bunch of pages that have a ring on them, and they're in plastic sleeves. Please do not take them out of the plastic sleeves. These are more for your teacher to have original copies than anything else, and it's a great way for me to show you what you need. So the top one, because most of these you're going to be printing. So if I asked you to pause the video, then go ahead and pause it, do what was just requested, and then come right back. So It's My Party rubric. We'll be referring to this numerous times so that you know exactly what the expectations are. So I need you to go in and print this. So go ahead and pause. The next thing you will need is the daily check-in. Every single day you work on this project, you're going to write the date, you're going to describe what you completed or what you did on that day, and then you're going to talk to your teacher about it and show your teacher so that they can sign or initial there so that they know what you're working on as well. So go ahead and pause so you can print this off. The next thing is the slice order forms for part one. You do not need to print this because we'll be able to use it right out of here because I have them on front and back. So you don't need to print this, but we'll be coming back to this very shortly. So let's flip through that. The next thing that you will need to print are the data collection for part one. So go ahead and pause and print that. It's 3 pages long. And the last thing that you'll need to print off for part one is this one that's called Comparing Slices, part one. So go ahead and pause it and print that off. Okay, so now that you have everything printed off that you need, let me flip this back. Okay, so now that you have everything printed off that you need, let's talk about what else there is in here. We have a Ziploc bag with the number 20 on it. That's for part two. You don't need that. Set that aside. You have a Ziploc bag that has a big number 12 on it. You need this for part one. And then there are pages of colored construction paper that you will need as well. So let's look at the first thing that we're going to do. In the clipped items, you need to go to the slice order forms for part one. You also need to have in front of you your data collecting sheets for part one. Cake flavor, frosting, and sprinkles. So what you are going to do now is you are going to take this information. So when I look at this first one, it says that Henry is having, the cake flavor he's having is chocolate, the frosting that he wants is strawberry, and the sprinkles that he wants are footballs. So we're just looking right now at the tallies portion of it. So you need to tally 1 chocolate for cake flavor for Henry. Frosting, he wanted strawberry, so 1 strawberry tally. And then lastly, he wanted footballs, so 1 football tally. So now you just need to go through all of these and do it for each of the 12 kids so that you know what they want on their slice of cake. So go ahead and pause it and do that tallying. Okay, so your tallying is done. Now what you need to do is you need to write a fraction. So we know that there are 12 kids and there are 12 slices of cake. So we, in the center part, oops, that's the sprinkles. I guess I want cake flavor. So you're going to count how many tallies you have here. There are 3 tallies for chocolate, so I'm going to make 3 12ths. I'm going to make a fraction right there. For white, it was 6, so that's 6 12ths right there. So go ahead and do that for all of your, all of those tallies. So pause and do that, please. Okay, so now that you have the fraction done, we need to solve the equivalent fraction. So for cake flavor, if we have 3 12ths, the equivalent fraction for that would be 1/4. 6 12ths, the equivalent fraction for that would be 1/2. And again, here we have 3 12ths, which would be 1/4. So you're going to do that for each of these. If you can't create an equivalent fraction, this one I couldn't create an equivalent fraction because it was 7 12ths. There is no equivalent fraction for that. I just wrote 7 12ths again over here. So do that for all of these. So go ahead and pause and do that. Okay, so let's see if we got these right. So let's look at cake flavor. And I'm going to read the flavor and then the equivalent fraction, and let's see if you got these right. So for chocolate, it would be 1/4. White cake, 1/2. Yellow cake, 1/4. Let's switch to frosting. Chocolate frosting, 7 12ths. Vanilla frosting, 1/4. Strawberry frosting, 1/6. And for sprinkles, the stars, you should have 5 12ths. Footballs, you should have 1/3. And flowers, you should have 1/4. Now this is when we're going to stop and refer to the rubric. So go ahead and pull out your rubric. Pause if you need to find your rubric. And we're going to look at this very top one, the data collection part 1. You will earn either 3 points, 2 points, or 1 point. You want to get 3 points because that is the most points. So in reference to this, if you had to make any corrections, I hope you made them. You would earn 3 points if you accurately tallied, created fractions, and equivalent fractions for the data. So you got all of that right. You did it, you didn't have any problems, you didn't have to make any corrections. You would give yourself, and circle that description, please, if that's what you earned. 2 points if most of your tallies, fractions, and equivalent fractions were correct. You got a couple wrong. You fixed them, but you got a couple wrong, so then circle there. 1 point if your tallies, fractions, and equivalent fractions were not done correctly. If you got a whole bunch of them wrong or you didn't know what you were doing, you would give yourself a 1 right there. Okay, so once we have done the data collection, now we can move on to starting our poster. So we're going to have 4 things labeled on our poster. So this is part 1 with 12 slices. So this represents the cake flavor. This one represents the different frostings. This one represents the sprinkles. And this one, I have a slice of cake falling. This one represents all of the different slices and how the kids wanted those made, how they made them, because they made their own. So we're going to look at cake flavor first. So for chocolate cake, I had 3/12, as do you, have 3/12. So what you're going to do is in here, these are like cardstock, more sturdy tracing patterns. So you're going to find the one, and I have it right on top, that is 3/12. If these were put together, it would be 12/12, they're one whole. But I only need 3/12. So I'm going to find my light brown construction paper in my little container, and I'm going to trace the 3/12. And then I'm going to cut it out. And then, once I've cut it out, I'm going to label it as I did here. I have it labeled as chocolate, and I have the initial fraction, which was 3/12, equals the equivalent fraction, which is 1/4. So I'm going to do that with each section of my cake, making sure that I have my initial fraction and my equivalent fraction. I'm going to do the same thing for frosting and the same thing for sprinkles. So this will take you a little bit of time, so go ahead and pause the video so that you can get this, and then we'll come back for the next step. Okay, so now you have finished your cake flavors, frosting, and sprinkles. So let's look at the rubric, because, let me see, it says display of characteristics, part 1. The characteristics are cake flavor, frosting, and sprinkles. So you have 3 different characteristics. So in order to earn 3 points, and you can score yourself now on this, to earn 3 points, each characteristic part is cut out properly and labeled with the fraction and equivalent fraction. Some of these, there isn't an equivalent fraction. Like chocolate frosting is 7/12. That's just the fraction. We can't make an equivalent fraction out of that. If you have all of that done beautifully there, then you would circle 3 points. You would earn 2 points if most characteristic parts are cut out properly and labeled with the fraction and equivalent fraction. 1 point if very few characteristic parts are cut out and properly labeled with the fraction and equivalent fraction. So you should be able to score that right now as well. One other thing that you should be able to score right now is cutting. 3 points if you cut straight and carefully on the lines. Don't make it all choppy and look like a chainsaw was used to cut the pieces. 2, if you usually cut straight and accurately on the lines. And then 1 point if you cut carelessly or stacked the paper. Stacking the paper, what I mean by that is you've traced it on one piece, and then you put 5 pieces underneath it to make 6, and then you cut it out. They will not be accurate, and then they will not fit and look nice for your final project. And everyone will be able to tell that you had stacked and it doesn't look nice. So please make sure that you don't stack. So go ahead and score yourself on that one as well. Okay, so the next thing that you need to do is make your slices of cake. I have all 12 of my slices right here. You're not going to glue them on yet until you have done the comparison with your slices, because I want you to be able to move them around. I just put them there now so that you could see what the end would look like. They just have that blue sticky tack on the back of them, and we'll be looking at that. We'll be laying them out and looking at those here in a minute. So what you need to do is cake flavor. Take your cake flavor first. You have 3 chocolate, 6 white, and 3 yellow. So in this bag, right here, you have some pieces where it's just a single slice. So you're going to match the chocolate color that you used up here. You want to use a coordinating color. It needs to be the same, whichever one you use. I made chocolate cake chocolate or brown, the yellow cake yellow, white cake white. Chocolate frosting I made brown, but a darker brown. Vanilla I made white. Strawberry frosting, I made pink. Footballs, I made a peach color because a nickname for a football is a pigskin, and a pigskin is a peach color. Stars, I made blue, and flowers, I made purple. Those are the colors that are in your kit. You could always use different colors if you want. They just have to stay consistent. So what you will do next is you have 3 pieces of chocolate cake. So you're going to trace 3 of these on here. I would trace one this way, and then I'd flip it to use up the space the best. And then maybe I'd put another one down here. Here again is where you want to do some nice cutting. Don't chop it. Don't layer it. Cut it nicely because you want it to fit and look nice in the end. So once you have them cut out, on the very tippity top, let me see if I can find Henry's. I have to see and hear what Henry's piece looked like. Chocolate, strawberry, and footballs. So either this one is Henry's or the other one is Henry's. There's Henry's. So I know it's Henry's because I have written Henry's name on the back. And then if you look on the front of his piece, I have his chocolate cake and it's labeled chocolate. Then I've shifted down a little bit and put strawberry for his strawberry frosting, shifted down a little bit and put footballs for his sprinkles. So I would suggest that you cut out all of your cake flavors first, make 3 chocolate, label all of them chocolate. Then cut out 6 white ones, label them white, 3 yellow, label them yellow. Then do the same thing with the frosting and the same thing with your sprinkles. Once you have them all cut out, then you can refer back to the order forms to construct their pieces. So Henry's piece is here. Let me see whose piece this is. And I'll know because the name's on the back. Oh, my sticky tack's right on top of the name. This piece belongs to Jack. And it says on here, bottom one is cake. If you think about the layers of a cake, the cake is on the bottom, and on top of the cake is your frosting with chocolate frosting, and on top of that you would put your sprinkles, which he picked stars. So I'm just going to check, where is Jack on my sheets? Here's Jack right here, and sure enough, he had white cake, chocolate frosting, and stars. I'm just going to put Jack back up here. So you're going to take time to cut all those out, label them, and then as you're putting them together, that's when you'll put the student's name on them. I just used a glue stick to stick them together, and it worked great. So go ahead and pause and take time to do that. Okay, now that all of your cake pieces are put together, remember, you don't have them glued down because you're going to be comparing them. Let's look at the rubric because I thought it said something about cake slices. Display of slices. Here we go. So display of slices. To earn 3 points, each slice of cake is labeled with a name, which will be on the back, the characteristics, cake flavor, frosting flavor, and sprinkles, and they are layered in the correct order. So you would give yourself 3 if you've done all that. You would give yourself a 2 if most of the slices of the cake are labeled with the name, the characteristics, and they are layered in the correct order. So you've messed up on some of them somewhere. Number 1 is very few of the slices of cake are labeled with a name, the characteristics, and they are layered in the correct order. So there were a lot of mistakes with that one. Okay, so I moved over to a table because I want to show you more closely the slices. So if I were to look at Henry's slice, he had chocolate cake, strawberry, and footballs. So this would be, did I have Henry's name on it? Look at that. On the back of this, I used sticky tack on it because to hang it on that other poster, which I took off. So what I've done is I wrote Henry's name on the back of the cake slice. And then I wrote chocolate, strawberry, and footballs because those were his choices for his slice of cake. I used a glue stick to glue these together. Now notice that they're not directly on top of each other. And I did that on purpose because I want to see the 3 layers of the cake. And you'll be using that, those 3 layers here in a couple of minutes when you're doing the comparison of your slices. So now what you need to do is you need to go back to the order form that was in the plastic sleeves, and you need to construct everybody's slice of cake. So construct Henry's slice of cake. Make sure, please, that you put the child's name on the back. So here's Liam's. So Liam had white cake, chocolate frosting, and footballs. Notice that every time I have footballs, it is the exact same color, and it is the exact same color that it is on my big chart. So keep your colors consistent because that is also part of the rubric, is keeping those colors consistent. So go ahead and make your 12 slices, and then we'll be right back and I'll tell you what to do next. So go ahead and pause it. Okay, the next thing you need is comparing slices part 1. So pull this out because you're going to be comparing your slices. So the paper says, now that you have created the 12 slices of cake, you need to compare them to one another. Find slices that you have at least 2 of the same characteristics, cake flavor, frosting, and sprinkles. Make equivalent fractions when you can. So my example was, and I have to move these around because that's the best way for me to do it. So I was looking at kids who had white cake, there's one, and chocolate frosting. White cake, chocolate frosting, white cake, chocolate frosting, white cake, chocolate frosting, white cake, chocolate frosting. So I have 4/12 on the sample example. You can see that it says 4/12 or 1/3 of the kids had white cake and chocolate frosting. So you now are going to find 5 other comparisons within your slices. Keeping in mind, you have to have 2 characteristics. So these 2 right here, the only characteristic they have in common is yellow cake. So those wouldn't work. This, however, has 3 characteristics that they have in common. So you definitely could use that. Your sentence would be different, and I do expect complete sentences. So have your initial fraction, then your equivalent fraction, and then describe what they have in common. Like mine, 4/12 is the original fraction, or 1/3, which is the equivalent fraction, of the kids had white cake and chocolate frosting. So you're telling me what they had in common for the comparison. So that is here, and you will do 5 complete sentences comparing those slices. Once you have your slices compared, then you are more than welcome, once you have those 5 done, you then are more than welcome to go ahead and create the circle like I originally had. And it doesn't matter how they go on here. I'm just randomly putting them on, and they're probably different than how they were when I first showed you this. I just want to be able to, I just want to be able to show all of them. And then we're going to go back and we're going to look at that rubric again because there's this part 1 is now completed. You will, as you probably already discovered, you'll need to get something from your teacher to display this on. That I did not provide. All right, so let's find the rubric again. so you should be able to get yourself a score on display of one characteristics part 1. And let's flip it over. Display of slices. You would earn 3 points if each slice of cake is labeled with a name, which is on the back, the characteristics, and they are layered in the correct order. Just think of it as a slice of cake. You would have the cake first, then you would put on the frosting, then you would put on the sprinkles. So the same order as if you were making the cake. You would earn 2 points if most of the slices of cake are labeled with a name, characteristics, and layered in the correct order. And 1 point if very few of the slices of cake are labeled with the name, the characteristics, and are in the correct order. The next part that you can give yourself a score is comparing slices part 1. That's the one that we just talked about. So you would earn 3 points if you wrote 5 complete sentences comparing your slices using 2 characteristics or more, because we found that we had some that had all 3 characteristics in common, and then you wrote the equivalent fractions. 2 points if you wrote 3 to 4 complete sentences comparing your slices using 2 characteristics, or you wrote some equivalent fractions. 1 point if you wrote 0 to 2 complete sentences comparing your slices using 2 characteristics, or you didn't write equivalent fractions, and you could have, but you just chose not to. Now, color scheme is the other one, which is down here. You would earn 3 points if you followed a consistent color scheme for your cake slices, frosting, and sprinkles. So whatever color you chose for footballs, originally, you use the same color in your individual cake slices. That's what I mean by color scheme and being consistent. 2 points if you followed a consistent color scheme for at least 2 of the characteristics, meaning the cake flavor, frosting, or sprinkles, or 1 point if you didn't follow a consistent color scheme. So at this point, you should have a bunch of these already scored, and you can score your cutting as well. This color scheme and the cutting, you will give yourself 2 scores because you'll have to cut and have a color scheme for part 2 as well. So part 1 is completed, and the next video will be for part 2. So I hope you had fun and that your cakes look fabulous. All right, thank you.